the initial plan was to present here a report that we've been preparing and writing for the past about 2 years, but as it often happens with deadlines, we didn't finish the report so far. It's ongoing. It will hopefully be published in April. I will then pass the link around of the final report. It's a larger topic than what I will now present. I will focus here on the EU influence and influence of European institutions on the situation of the Greeks of Istanbul especially. Now, after having heard about Alevi and yesterday of the Kurds, these are millions of people, 10 to 15 to up to 20 together. Now, why a report on 2,000 people? And it's the situation of the 2,000 Greeks who have left is not only important for the 2,000 Greeks who have left, but it's a question of justice for them, but it's also if the problem solved concerning them, that will facilitate the situation of those communities that are still stronger and that can profit with these then given rights fully and run their facilities, but it also will have an effect on the Kurds and Alevi and an understanding of minority and majority, of pluralism, of multiculturalism, of the relations between religion and state, of secularism in Turkey. That's why they still matter, and this is what will be the subtitle of the report. I'm legally not allowed to tell the title of the report. Concerning the Greeks especially, and in a more larger view, democratization and Europeanization, the turning point was the year 1999. First, an improvement of relations between Turkey and Greece and the so-called earthquake diplomacy. In August, an earthquake in Istanbul, in September in Athens. And then some months later, the EU candidacy given to Turkey in Helsinki. That had as a consequence a series of legal changes, a new civil code 2001, new penal code 2004, abolition of the death penalty, etc. For the Christians, the most important thing, and for the Jews, is changes to the foundations law. And this because the foundations, and that's often not completely understood, not even in Turkey, the foundations are the only legal representation of non-Muslim minorities. They are the owner of the institutions, the owner of schools, hospitals, orphanages, home for elderlies. They are the owners of the churches. They employ the bishops, they employ the priests, and they finance themselves largely through rent income and through donations. There are currently 165, and 62 of them are Greek. This is because when this was established in 1936, when these institutions became foundations, the Greeks were still about 120, 130,000, and were by far the largest non-Muslim minority. There's a systematic property confiscation of these non-Muslim foundations since the 60s, since the Cyprus crisis, and there's a ban on acquiring new property since especially 1974. The court then decided that non-Muslim Turkish citizens are so-called local foreigners, as they were labeled then, yerli yabancı, and they were not allowed to acquire property. This has been criticized from the EU from the beginning. In the first EU progress report after Turkey became a candidate in 2000. In 2001, some of these formulations that you see now, they have not basically changed until now, especially concerning Halki. There are some things, of course, that changed, that were reframed then also in the progress reports, but by and large, many of these problems continue until today. But concerning the foundations, that many changes have happened in the past 10 years, starting with the coalition government before the AKP in 2002, making it possible to acquire new property. There was first an authorization was needed in legal changes 2002 and 2003. Then the government prepared a new law that was passed in Parliament in 2006. It was then a long battle of several years between the government and the establishment, the government and the armed forces, the government and the opposition, as you want to frame it. So first the president vetoed it, then they had to wait until there was a new president. The president passed it, and then the opposition party applied to the Constitutional Court to abolish those sections that concern non-Muslim minorities. That was the case with the president and with the opposition party. who had a 54 pages application to the Constitutional Court, and it's really scandalous. It's too detailed to mention it here. But besides these legal changes, there are also other factors in this Europeanization process that made it possible to find a domestic solution in Turkey. And this is while this process of legal changes and of improving the rights of foundations was ongoing, more and more non-Muslim foundations started to apply to the European Court of Human Rights to get their property back. The first was, some of you might know that building. This is not the Patriarchate. That's a school. That's the boys' school in Fener, and they got a donation of a building that they used for rent income in 1952, and in 1958 they bought the rest of the house. This was then confiscated, and they applied, and this ended in the end positively for this foundation, and other foundations followed. So it was not only them, it was Armenian foundations, Jewish foundations, and Turkey always lost. It was always obliged to pay quite a big amount of money, which made it more needed to have a domestic solutions for the non-Muslim minorities. And this is what actually happened. Then step by step, it was possible to claim property back. This process from the first law in 2008 was not very successful. There were amendments to that law, the latest one in 2001, a temporary Article 11. You can again apply, and more property is being returned. This is why the religious minorities in general support the EU process. Especially the Patriarch is quite outspoken in his support for Turkey's EU membership, because he saw the positive results of the past 10, 12 years in that process. There are regular meetings with EU politicians. The state's approach in that period also has changed. There are several examples. One is a circular from May 2010 that the Prime Minister's office sent to all the provinces in the country, saying that please now treat non-Muslim citizens equally. Also, politicians changed their approach, especially those dealing with foreign policy, be it the foreign minister or be it Egemen Bağış. Davutoglu visited the parliament last year. There you also see the confusion of Turkish politicians, because he speaks of the Patriarchate as a religious institution, which it is not, because it does not exist, which we will now see, and that they are proud now of that heritage and that multiculturalism should live on. There are also, concerning the Greeks, there are some decisions that are important, but they are not legally based. It was allowed for them after 88 years to hold a religious service in the Black Sea in a Sumela monastery. And the bishops of the synod, which elect the Patriarch, they have to be Turkish citizens according to a decree by the governor of 1924. There are very few Turkish citizen bishops left because the community is so small. They were actually given citizenship in 2010 and 11. That's the church service. And there is, even if the institution, what we will see, is not legally recognized, there is a de facto kind of recognition. This has to do with also with a court case to get a property back. This is on the biggest Princess Island close to Istanbul. There is a big wooden building that was once it was a hotel owned by French, and it was bought by the Patriarchate. It was the orphanage of the Patriarchate. It was emptied by the state in 1963 because it says the building is not secure anymore. In the 90s, then the state argued, you don't use the building anymore, so it's out of use, so we take it, and the state confiscated it, and they applied, and the European Court of Human Rights always had the institution Ecumenical Patriarchate that was the owner of that building. And so funnily, for lawyers, that is maybe especially interesting, that's the building as it is still today. The lawyer got the title deed with the name of Ecumenical Patriarchate, but that does not exist. So an institution that does not exist owns a building, and it was handed to the Patriarch, to a person that does not exist either. So the current ambivalent and a bit strange situation is that the institution is tolerated but not recognized. It's granted rights, not granted rights but privileges, and they could of course be redrawn afterwards. It remains a legal ghost, and there we come to another European institution and process that's important in improving rights. There you see the patriarchal buildings, and as I said before, they're not owned by the institution, they're owned by a foundation that's run by 7 lay people who, through rent income, pay then the water, electricity, etc., and also the incomes of the bishops. This has been criticized by the EU, but also by the Council of Europe and the Venice Commission. The Venice Commission came to Turkey and made a survey of the situation of secularism and talked to the different religious minorities, and made several propositions, as it is in European states, and presented 4 models how to organize legally religious communities. It did not say that Turkey should choose the one or the other, but please choose one of them so that religious communities can have legal personality and be represented in the states. We will in this report propose that the French model of the Association Cultuelle is the easiest and would be in addition to the current association law, having a special category of religious communities. This was taken up also by the Patriarch, who made a presentation in the Constitutional Commission of Parliament in February of last year. He explicitly mentioned Article 9 and the recommendations of the Venice Commissions, but there is no progress on that issue so far. That's the meeting in the Parliament, which was also a first that he was allowed to speak in Parliament. The second big issue for the Patriarchate, I will not get into detail, is that the education facility, which is the theological school on Halki, is another Princess Islands, is closed in 1971. There were several attempts to reopen it, and currently that's been going on, but there's no result. If you want, we can get into detail, but I wanted in the end also come to some aspects that are, because there are problems for the Patriarchate, but then there are problems for the community. So for the Patriarchate, it's legal personality and Halki, this theological school, and education of priests. For the minority itself, it's the situation of the schools, problems with still with foundations and property, also property issues of individuals. Many of these individuals now live in Greece, and legal problems also becoming in higher ranks of civil service. For the school problem is that with a population of 2,000, the current law restricts the access to these schools to Greek Orthodox who are at the same time Turkish citizens. So Greeks from Greece, other Orthodox, others who can't go to these schools. Therefore, this huge also infrastructure of Greek schools is cut down to 5 and currently has only 214 pupils, of which almost half are actually Arabs from the province of Antakya. They are Arab Orthodox, but that was added to Turkey by a referendum in 1939, and the state labeled them Rum, so Greek Orthodox as they were called in the Ottoman Empire. They are allowed to go to these institutions. That's why they are still alive. So you needed to open them not only for the Greeks but also for the other minorities to have more viable schools again. We will make some other suggestions also to maybe have a Greek-Turkish university, as there are Turkish-French and now Turkish-German university, to make the city more attractive for Greeks who are in Istanbul and others to come. Because if all this is done, all the legal changes are done, all the reforms, there is total equality, this will not be enough for the Greeks of Istanbul. The community will definitely die out. It's a biological thing that is not possible to avoid. With a community of 2,000, the large majority is over 60. So this is not an obligation for the government, of course, to do anything to have a Greek Orthodox community in Istanbul, but if the government wants to stick to its rhetoric of multiculturalism and how important that is, then there are several things that could be done to attract Greeks or Greek Orthodox who are outside of Turkey. This is not an obligation. We will have several proposals how that could be done, and how there are examples in other countries and other European countries that revived communities that had already died out. And these proposals, I hope you will be able to read in April or March or May in this report. ESI has several reports on Turkey. They are all for free on the website. This will hopefully be added soon. Thank you.